This is episode 4 of the Tying Toolbox. We're now going to be adding our first materials to our hook, and today we're talking about Marabou. Marabou is one of the most common materials and probably one of the first that you're going to use when learning to tie a fly. So, we've got our thread, just like we've shown. We're going to start it here at the front of the hook and work backwards. A lot of times we would use these for a tail, so we're going to start at the very rear of the hook. We have two different lengths of Marabou. So this is the smaller Marabou that would be used more for a tail. We can see here that it doesn't have a very thick stem in it, and these fibers are much shorter. This would be perfect for tying in as a tail. This is obviously a much longer and wider piece of Marabou. As we can see, these fibers are a lot longer down here. You can use these fibers as well to tie in tails if you wish. You can see this stem gets very flexible right around here. That makes it really easy to palmer. You can attach your hackle pliers here at the edge of the stem at the very end and be able to wrap it this way. We're going to be using the shorter one as a tail. So we're going to line it up, make sure that we get our sizing and length correct. Generally, about the length of the hook shank is going to be about right to measure out the length of your tail. We're going to hold that with our left hand, grab our bobbin. Now, if you try to wrap directly, see that's going to push the material out of the way, and you're not going to be able to grab a good thread wrap on it. We're going to make a loose thread wrap over the top. Then we're going to pull the thread towards us. That's going to lock that material in place for us to now be able to tie in that Marabou. One of the things you really want to keep in mind when you're tying in any material is that the thread wraps spread over the material is what really helps lock it in, not consecutive thread wraps right on top of each other. That won't really lock that material in. So if you have issues with your materials pulling out, make sure that you're getting enough wraps spread over the material. Once you've got enough tied in, make sure you're using your rough scissors for this. We don't want to use our really nice sharp scissors for making rough cuts where you're not going to see the product of that cut. There we have it. Pretty easy way to tie in a tail. Great for nymphs and streamers. One of the most useful materials that there is. Next, the other less common but very useful way to use Marabou is by palmering it. So palmering means that we're going to wrap it around the hook, just like you might wrap hackle. This is great for adding a little bit of body and some movement, more for a streamer than any other type of fly. But since I like streamers, we're going to talk about it. Here we're going to be using a large piece of Marabou. We're going to find on the stem where it kind of starts being from stiff and getting more flexible. Again, remember, we're cutting this with our rough pair of scissors to trim out the tip of this Marabou. I'm going to strip out a few of the hairs just to be able to access the stem. By tying in just the stem, it's going to give us a really nice tight wrap. And I'm going to tie it up here just because I'm going to show how I might use it as kind of the front or like a collar. So remember, we're going to tie that stem in all the way up a little piece of the stem instead of just tying a few wraps right on top of it. I have a rotary vise. We're going to start using a rotary function on our vise. We're going to tie a half hitch to make sure that we lock in this thread. You're going to make a half hitch by wrapping around your finger and then threading that over the eye of the hook. So essentially all you tied was just an overhand knot right over the eye of the hook to help lock that thread into place. Next, you're going to take your arm of your vise, place the thread in there. That's going to allow you to spin your hook with your vise. So we're going to prep our feather so that we've got a lot of our feather is loose. We're just holding the very tip of it. We're going to start rotating our vise while we use our left hand to pull the materials rearwards. We're just going to make some consecutive wraps of this Marabou as we keep using our left hand to pull those fibers rearwards. And just take your time and go slow. If those fibers start getting messed up, just take your time, use your hand to pull them back. And I'm just going to wrap all the way towards the tip. Once we get here, I like to get a hold of the point on the hook with my left hand. We're going to slide the bobbin cradle out of the way. Then we're going to make a wrap on the other side of the end of the Marabou and start wrapping that rearwards a small ways. We've got that locked in. We're going to take our rough scissors again. Anything you're not going to see a cut that you're going to make, use those rough scissors. Cut the tip of that Marabou out. Use your left hand again to help kind of preen those fibers rearwards. And then finish tying it off. There we have it. Makes a really cool tail on bigger streamers if you do that at the very end, or halfway through a streamer or towards the head. Makes a really cool body. Looks like fins or gills, something like that for a cool streamer pattern. Also can work great for nymphs, for adding kind of a collar to your nymph if you use a really thin or small Marabou. That's everything I think you need to know about Marabou. Some awesome techniques there. Make sure you utilize Marabou in your streamers and in your flies. It's one of those materials that fish tend to eat. Stay tuned for the next episode where we're talking about hackle.